Okay. So, hi, I'm David Blair. I publish with the same press as the three poets tonight, MadHat Press, and I'm here for Mark Vincenz, who can't be here tonight. But I believe he's watching online. So, hello, Mark. How are you? Oh, I kind of good. So, our first reader is Aidan Rooney. Aidan Rooney's third collection of poetry is Go There, MadHat Press 2020. And here it is, the most colorful book on the shelf, as Aidan pointed out. Awarded the Hennessy Literary Award for New Irish Poet in 1997. His collections Day Release, the Gallery Press 2000, and Tightrope, the Gallery Press 2007. Recent translations of poetry from Creole and French can be read at Vox Populi and Tamboo, as well as in print in New American Writing. A teacher at Thayer Academy in Braintree, Massachusetts, Rooney was the producer of Translating Haiti at the 2021 Massachusetts Poetry Festival, featuring Haitian authors Emily Profete, I didn't take French, so I'm terrible with that, Eddie Tanguy Toussaint, and Dumafis Lafontaine. So welcome, Aidan. Good to have you up here.
I didn't know I was the first one. Kind of ready. Prophet.
I took German.
Emily Prophet. That's good too. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Last time I was here, I was trying to think. I think it was then you were reading. I was here for your reading. I lay on the floor there because there were no spots. It was packed. I want to say it was 2019, February. And A.E. Stallings read here too that day. Am I right in thinking that was it? And I bought her, so I'm going to open with a poem by Alicia. There's a date on it, so we'll know. Might have been the last reading was here, February 2019. And that was the last time I was in here. It's great to be back. It's good to be back in here. It's good to be back reading to the live/hybrid, hello Zoom, do that kind of reading. I've done a few of the Zoom variety, but it's great to be back in front of a live audience. And I think this is my first reading to that. That was my last reading to be at with a live audience, and this is my first reading to the live audience. I was going to read one poem. Is that okay to read some other people's poems? Called Silence. Let's go. Where is it? 114. Here we go. Silence. Silence has its own notation. Dark jottings of duration, but not pitch. A long black box or little feathered hitch like a new Greek letter or diacritical mark. Silence is the function of time. The lark in flight, but not in song, and nothing which keeps secrets or confessions. Pregnant, rich, or awkward, cold, the pause that makes us hark, the space before or after. It's the room in which melody moves, the medium through which thought travels. It is golden, best, welcome relief to talk-worn tedium. Before the word itself, it was the womb. It has a measure. Music calls it rest. That's from A.E. Stallings, and I think I'm going to follow up with one of those translations that was mentioned by Ida Faubert. Ida Faubert is a Haitian French poet from the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties, who lived, I suppose, mostly in Paris, but grew up in Port-au-Prince. She was the daughter of the president of Haiti at the time. 1882, 1969 are her years for Ida Faubert. And she was really the first Haitian poetess to write point, period, to write poems and publish poems and be accepted into the literary establishment of the Belle Époque in Haiti at the time, 1920s, and Paris as well, where she hung out with the Roaring Twenties crowd there too. So this poem is called Tropical Evening. I'm just going to read it in English, if that's okay. So translated from the French. Tropical evening. The night is bright. The night is dear and raw. With the sun done, the moon is on the roses. The heart deep down in everything dozes, and tall black palms dream near the water. Jasmines send up starlit shoots that blend with the clematis. Summer breathing touches heavy fruit. A lash feeling unveils itself and ravels round a bend. Down there on the path, not a peep, peaceful. Nothing phases the measure of contentment. Come breathe with me the nightwalk scents and exhale into the night, my erratic soul. So that's Ida Faubert. And one last translation before I get going. This is from New American Writing, which is a wonderful collection, got a bunch of you guys in it. And I'm going to read a Haitian Creole poem in English that I translated into English. That's in here. It's called Rotten Spell. It's by a Boston poet. I probably should have called him and had him come and tell him that I was going to read his poem. His name is Dumas Fils La Fontaine. He's a great poet. It's called Un temps pourri in Haitian Creole. And this is the English. In this poem, it's when he sent it to me, about a year ago, early into COVID. I was just struck by the technical proficiency of this kind of driving rhyme that runs through the poem. And it starts with a kind of a pandemic landscape and then kind of just goes on a tirade of socio-political, anti-Clinton, anti-neoliberal US policy in Haiti. And then it takes a dig at the French as well. Like it's not enough to go after our foreign policy. Let's go after the French while you're at it. So I just had to translate it, and it's in this. Rotten spell. Love, for want of show and tell, checks in at the Hell Hotel that logs among its clientele couples in a cold spell. Polite, aggressive personnel, a gallery that bade farewell, spouses woke on eggshell. Parents on their carousel, kids in some remote stairwell, the world in a nutshell, hell hold unsalvageable. Pro and anti-maskers yell, shuttered stores up and sell, Wall Street's virtual cartel deafens past its closing bell, the doink of an oil barrel, rice-filled, bless you Bill, deep dipped in the ink well of trade and AIDS, high decibel, swagger of imperial, hell-bent goodwill, all out to quell what ill. No show, just kiss and tell when Haiti, France's Jezebel, always ailing infidel, fets its bicentennial. If all this sounds swell, lobby for acquittal. Take your blue bowl and tell Madame Larry, la demoiselle, to dispel this rotten spell of raging, plot lost, pitted people bent on bending arcs from equal. Okay, enough of all that. Read a poem from this. Came out during that whole thing, July 2020. Fun to read from it. First time live. Fed up looking at the Zoom camera on your computer, getting it right, all that stuff. This poem is called Colony. And I wrote it outside very quickly. Sometimes poems, write themselves like that. And it kind of brings together two passions of mine. One is to cut up trees, because we burn a lot of firewood during the winter. I try to look for dead trees on various people's properties and cut those up. And occasionally I'll take down a rotten tree. I like cutting up trees. What can I say? I'm a lumberjack in a former life. And I also liked ants. Ants are really cool. Ants are cool animals, small, and you kind of have to get down there to look at them. So this is kind of as we say nowadays, at the intersection of those two pleasures, colony. Whoops, lost my page. Colony. What I'd thought rot in the dead oak was ants. The carpenter guild who'd bored the heartwood, the height of the trunk and out through the limbs. They seed from each break in the fallen tree like a smashed cantaloupe down seed runnels in a stampede of black metallica. Light struck, the workers rise up on hind legs, antennae hooked, and read the buzzsawed air. And here comes the queen, led forth in a convoy of young swarmers laden with large white eggs, juggled between twins or backpacked aloft, negotiating roadblocks, checkpoints, the larvae cradled in the soft vice grip, called for infants and delicate weapons. They will build upon a hill not far away. The ones who can take wing to go elsewhere. Maybe one more from this, and then let me know it's 15 minutes. I'm going to read a poem I haven't read yet from this book. Let's see. It's called In a Country Churchyard. And it's kind of like a slant elegy to Seamus Heaney, so it seemed kind of appropriate to read it here. It's in memoriam of Seamus Heaney. And it remembers his funeral in 2013, September. And the Gravediggers. I teach English and French at a local school, and today I did the Gravediggers Act 5 of Hamlet with senior high schoolers. And I thought of it as poem because I had forgotten the grave digging scene from Hamlet. I'm teaching it for the first time in 30 years today. And this is a poem about two gravediggers, father and son team, very elderly father, and 30-something son who along with a couple of other people dug the grave for Seamus Heaney. It was a beautiful sunny evening, and after all of the ceremony, as you imagine there was, and after the tea in the local parish hall, the gravediggers went back to the grave to fill in the grave, right? You kind of make it look nice and put orchids on top and fill it in. I got talking to the son, and so this kind of chronicles that conversation with the son, and then later with the father. And the son let me in on this kind of little, on something I felt bad knowing, that they were going to tell the father, the grave digging father, that he had just dug his last grave. He was going to go out on that high, and he just buried Seamus Heaney. He buried everybody in the parish. He buried hunger strikers in 1981 and 1982 against Margaret Thatcher. Buried other terrorists in this graveyard. He had spent his life digging graves in Balahi. And the father was over there sitting beside the grave, kind of on a wall, and the sun was going down. It was one of these moments, very poignant moment, beautiful moment. And knowing that they were going to tell the father that, hey, this is it for you. No more burials. It was kind of stayed with me. And the other thing of note maybe is that they brought in a digger. I don't know what a digger is in American. There's a little mechanical vehicle, and at the end they scooped up some shale, sand from the shores of Loch Ness. Seamus Heaney I believe, or his family had asked that they put some sand from Loch Ness, a nearby lake, and pour it into the grave. So they had it in the mechanical digger, and when it fell into the grave, it made a kind of a wall of sand falling from mechanical digger. Anyway, it's called In a Country Churchyard, in memoriam Seamus Heaney, 1939-2013. We want him to go out on a high note, said the gravedigger's eldest son, himself a gravedigger. He stood back from the edge, his right foot on the left lug of a spade. White orchids dressed the rug of man-made grass, rolled out over planks laid across the space. His father sat against the open plot. On a stone wall, the sun going down lit up. It shone on the flowers and warmed the father, his good cap doffed, his head inclined in rest. He dug for everyone in the graveyard, mad dog even, and the hunger strikers. We haven't told him yet, the son disclosed, but will when all the fuss is over. His father's hair, as the poets used to, glowed in a sudden sideways burst of sunshine, magnesium burning, and would not let up no matter the light or the light dying. After tea, the sun drove in the digger, its link box raised, then tipped to fill the hole with shingle scooped from the shore of Loch Ness. It fell like the wall of a waterfall. He watched his father through its thinning veil get up to get the shovel and the rake. Time for one or two short ones, or one? Okay. So recently I've been writing animal poems. I've got 121. I'm planning on 121. I have about 100 go. They're very short. They're 11 lines long. So I'm thinking of a book called, very uninspiredly, Menagerie is the word. And I'll read 3. They're 11 liners. I'll read 1 or 2, and then James is going to give me the axe if we can't run out of time. This is number 4. It's called Macaques. And each of them are dedicated to somebody different in the world. This is for Shiva in Hyderabad in India. Macaques. Off gallivanting go the pink-faced macaques with my unattended underwear, short shorts and shades. At one of the 7 pools that never runs dry, we've come to get a swim in before sundown. Having the crack of their lives by the looks of it, the macaque who nabbed my Adidas Climalite, presenting rump to the one who got the boxers, while the monkey with my favorite aviators barks like an elephant from atop the temple wall, giving everyone the bared teeth silent treatment, and trains the last of the sun on gold rims and dark glass. Chipmunks, number 16. This is for my son, Kieran. Could the fucking chipmunks stick to nuts and such and lay off the sun golds and Candyland reds they stuff cheek pouches with deft, twitchy paws, then dart into scoot holes at the thought of a hawk or screen door slid open? Do they give fear a rest when they mate in sleeping quarters below the deck, or does always feeling fragile seem reasonable? What does the black-lined side swipe of a white stripe do to stay the jitters, help run under the radar? Do they know they're cute? And when it's Christmas, when grounds for their asylum bid are found frivolous? And one last one, Doe and Fawn, number 9, for my other son, Carl, who lives in Brooklyn. The doe deer, female deer, is woke to but weary of her wariness. She plays the stock-still staring game from a jade clearing out back, her so small as to be near unseen, up, nibbling on the just about to bloom courgettes and cucumbers. What has she figured out, son, in her short allotment of a lot to weigh up? Self and other, skedaddle or fight, which she knows she can't, and just no clear clue to how to converse with us, but stand erect and point her unblinking head, send a telltale Sideways dance, then slow-mo, pivot back among the dense trees and see to it her fawn follow. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. It's hot. You're taking this off. Take your jacket off before you go up.
That was an amazing elegy for Seamus Heaney without mentioning Seamus Heaney, really.
Yeah.
It's astonishing. Oh, that's right. I can take off my mask. So I'm really happy to get to introduce my friend Kevin Gallagher, who is an editor and a fabulous poet. And he's also an economist, which I think is wild because my father's an economist. And I've watched an economist work for decades. And a lot of the work of an economist is abstract, right? Kind of like a doctor who's trying to keep an abstract entity from getting sick and dying, right? And I love the way Kevin's poetry is human and specific, and it does all the things that the humanities do, and all the things that are street level, really. And even when he writes formal poetry, there's a connection to like kind of the ballad tradition, I think, especially in a book like Loom, right? Which is a street form, and it's how history and politics and, you know, the social conditions of the world feel on the level of the sidewalk, really. And, you know, the ballad did that in, you know, traditionally the ballad was the way of doing that, was doing a history on the street. And so I think that it's wonderful and inventive and original work. So that's my off the top of my head introduction for Kevin Gallagher. He's a poet, publisher, and political economist living in Greater Boston. Gallagher's newest works are the forthcoming books, And Yet It Moves, MadHat, Fall 2021, knock on wood, The Wild Goose, Loom Press 2022, and he's the publisher and co-editor of Spoke, a Boston-based annual of poetry and poetics, which is one of the best things in Boston writing at all. And Gallagher's work as a professor of global development policy at Boston University, Pardee School of Global Studies is important, but maybe not as important as all these other things we've been talking about. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Too kind. First, praise to the Grolier. Thank you so much for keeping this space alive and everything that you do. It's great to be part of MadHat Press. It's great to be here with Ben, with David and Aidan. I'm going to read from my forthcoming book, And Yet It Moves, coming out with MadHat Press. You can pre-order it. It's just not quite there yet. It's called And Yet It Moves. I dedicate it to my wife, who's currently in Glasgow at the climate change negotiations, which are pretty much collapsing because folks with wealth and power just won't acknowledge and they just can't handle the truth. But trading the truth for power is not a new phenomenon. Close to 1,000 years after the fall of Rome, but just a few hundred years ago, the only truth that prevailed in the West was darkness. Images of the inferno forced the people to do nothing but work, pray, and die. Petrarch climbed Mount Ventoux to get a better view. He was taken by a rebirth of wonder and searched for knowledge and love for the rest of his life. The Medici family of Florence amassed enormous wealth and power while amplifying the Renaissance with art, with knowledge, and a new humanist consciousness that developed out of the doors that Petrarch opened. In the continuous quest for more, the Medici unleashed book hunters that scoured the land and ancient monasteries for forgotten and sequestered manuscripts. The world changed when Poggio Bracciolini found On the Nature of Things by Lucretius, locked up in the Benedictine library of Fuita. On the Nature of Things was the first epic poem with a philosophy of matter and space, nothingness and being, the infinity of the universe, and the movements of atoms, all conducted without a god or without a wand. As patrons, the Medici marched an eternal soft parade of Donatello, Brunelleschi, Galileo, Vasari, Botticelli and Michelangelo's sky in the Sistine Chapel, Fra Angelical's fresco in each cell at the Dominican convent of St. Marco. Medicis were bankers to the papacy, and then they became popes themselves, who put the cleansing of sins up for sale to the people. The Dominican friar Savonarola saw the darkness returning. Savonarola preached for a wild repentance. He instigated the bonfire of the vanities, where artifacts of wealth, pagan living, and humanist art were burned in screaming flames. Savonarola himself was burned to death in the Piazza dei Signoria. To maintain power, the Medici chose to embrace the Inquisition and withdraw financial support for Renaissance society. This shift was the manifest in their betrayal of Galileo, who was forced to retract the very theories of physics and astronomy that the Medici themselves had financed him to develop. Milton's visit to Galileo while under house arrest inspired Paradise Lost, and it wasn't until 1992, on Halloween, that the Vatican apologized and said they were wrong. I begin the book with a small quote by Muriel Rukeyser. Time comes into it. Say it. Say it. The universe is made of stories, not of atoms. Petrarch, Mount Ventoux, 1336. How much conviction do we have to trample the appetite of earth beneath us? I was an invisible and hiding in the darkness. I had no idea how hard it might be, but it doesn't matter with me now. I was moved to wander up the mountain, to see the vast swell of oceans, to smell the broad waterfalls diving into rivers, and to live through the revolution of firing stars. I made it to the mountaintop, and I will not stop there. Lucretius. It has been so dark you could never see me. The Bible shows us how to get to heaven, but it won't show us how the heavens go. I have the slow feet of 1,000 years. I learned by doing what I had to know. We are not the center of the universe. Truth is the testimony of sense. Heaven and matter in the same sentence. Atoms and nothingness and nothing else. History returns. Let go of your hold. Cosimo de' Medici. I, Cosimo de' Medici, a cosmos, divine am I inside and out, and I make holy whatever I touch or am touched from. I know someone always wants to kill me, so I multiply my wealth and might without forgetting that I must be loved at home and across the world. If your family attempts to rival mine, I will see to it that you are taxed to death. Anything that I leave behind will remain here forever. The people of Florence love me, as do the dukes in London, Naples, and Cologne. But just in case, I sleep while heavily armed and switch bedchambers 3 times a night. Fra Angelica. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Don't be shy or scared of my wings. I have come to you to plant a seed. Don't pull away. Listen. You will give birth to the greatest being. His return will set us free. You have been chosen to be the mother of God. Open your heart, Mary. You will see you are bearing the fruit of a great king. Pray for our sinners now and as we plead at the hour of our death and dying. You have no idea how much love you'll bring. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Lorenzo de' Medici. The Pope and the Pazzi's failed to murder me right underneath Brunelleschi's dome. Just as the priest raised his host, 2 clergy slipped daggers from their robes and gashed me in the nape of my neck. But I too had a sword under my cloak. I lost my brother, but I fought them off. Here in Florence, we parade more than popes. Everyone will know the Medici name forever. At once, I commissioned Botticelli and Leonardo to paint a ceiling fresco of the assassins and with the fugitives swinging by their throats. We stripped him, threw a noose around his neck, tossed him from the window, and he swung like a pendulum, leaving his time. We buried him out in the country, then dug up his corpse and dragged him through the city by his noose. We slapped his rotting head against his family's door like a knocker. We paraded him to the Arno and threw him in. From all over the great city, they watched him float down the river. We dragged him out, tied a rope around his skeleton's neck, hung him from a willow tree, smashed his bones, then sunk him in the Arno all over again. Giovanni de' Medici, the Medici Pope. The Lord is weeping through me, singing, turn the lights of all the sinners back on. Don't miss this once in a lifetime offer. Get your cash, get in line, save your soul. You can buy yourself a ticket or a scroll that will expedite the time that it takes to get your sins purged in purgatory. You will be on the fast track to the heavens. The cost depends on your number of sins. After you purge yourself, we have a special offer for one night and just one night only. You can absolve the sins of your dead loved ones too. The souls in heaven's ring as the coins in the basin sing. Galileo Galilei. To the infinite amazement of all, I watch the moon stroll every single night. I see your enemy's ships far at sea. Your captains can spy storm clouds on the horizon. The moon looks like a surface of the earth with her mountain chains and deep valleys. We are all lost on fixed and wandering stars. Their globes are perfectly round and bounded. This confirms what Aristotle envisioned. The celestial bodies are perfect spheres, but the fixed stars are not bounded at all. They have rather the aspect of blazes with vibrating and scintillating rays. That was Galileo's spyglass, where he discovered what Copernicus had done in equations, that indeed the earth revolves around the sun, not the way it is in the Bible, which is that everything revolves around the earth. And when he wrote that book, financed by the Medici, when they became the popes, they issued the Index Decree 1616. We have learned of the spread and acceptance of a false Pythagorean doctrine, most contrary to Holy Scripture, that the earth moves and the sun does not. To ensure this opinion won't advance to the prejudice of Catholic truth, such books of heresy and error shall henceforth be condemned and prohibited. We suspend all such books until corrected wherever and in whatever language. Thou shalt not read them. Thou shalt not own them. Thou shalt not print them. Surrender them to your inquisitors at once upon reading this decree. Galileo writes a letter to his old patrons. The glory and greatness of Almighty God is marvelously discerned in a proof. His works are true and are all divinely read by entering the open book of heaven. There are some who seek to destroy me and everything mine by any means, because they can't handle the truth I see. They fabricate a shield of fallacy. Banning me is a contravention in truth. Looking through my telescope is seeing the splendor of the sun and the universe and glimpsing at the heavens God made of us. No imagining through a sacred book. All you have to do is spy. Put him through a big trial. And You just hang on. He so the Medici would rather stay popes than pretend they knew the guy that they financed to basically start the science of physics, and they make him confess. This is Galileo. Touching these Gospels, I, Galileo, swear I believe in the Catholic Church. I have been suspected of heresy, a suspicion justly conceived of me. I entirely abandon the false doctrine that we are following the sun and the sun doesn't move. Yes, the earth is the center of the universe. I curse and detest these said heresies. I swear I will never say or assert anything that will bring further suspicion that I am not a servant of the Lord. As I break any of these promises, I submit to penalty, and yet it moves. He supposedly said, and yet it moves under his breath to basically say, you guys can get what you want. You can't handle the truth, but it moves. Thank you all.
I never thought of it. I guess the Medicis are kind of like the Republicans are like less fun Medicis. So let's introduce Ben Mazur, and Ben Mazur is an amazing, brilliant poet. I think he's a genius. You know, nobody writes poems like him that change time, and they're rooted in music, and they have a beautiful control of narrative and tone, and they're surprising, and they're unfolding, and they're huge. And I know that after saying those things, he'll probably read poems that are totally different than that. Born in New York City in 1964, Ben Mazur studied poetry with Seamus Heaney at Harvard and did his Ph.D. in textual scholarship under Christopher Ricks and Archie Burnett at the Editorial Institute, Boston University. Since then, he has published more than 10 collections of poetry, including most recently, The Hierarchy of the Pavilions, MadHat Press 2020. He's currently editing the collected poems of Delmore Schwartz for Farrar Straus and Giroux. So, looking forward to hearing you read.
Is this fine like this?
Yep.
It rains, one steps up through the haze of tan and violet on to the maze of memory, misty where one stands, twisting, separating strands. The hours dim and no one calls. Obligation mutely falls through floors of mountains. Origin, anonymously you begin. The blasted lantern of the nerves lights up the sky where starlight curves. Below on earth, some few pass by, sheer constructs of identity. They swirl and plaster every sense unto a law of difference. Not clear how long, on what direction, or what direction subsume the nerves in their inspection. The skeleton's examination evokes and incites brief procreation, filed away some future date astonished memories locate. The serifs of pedestrians seep into violets, into tans, breaching desires boulevards, throw down the last of evening's cards. There is no way to formulate identity's raw nervous state. It seems to slip into the world by stellar facts and atoms hurled. Into the mythic stratosphere, ideas formulate the seer. Genesis sans generation, a change of state trains at London Station. And then I'll read the first two sonnets of something called 8 Sonnets, the Beginning of Something. 1. The sky seems most propitious in the climes of old world Boston in our latter day. Go dreamy round the lamppost, so the times of other bounties seem ranked in array like ours. The cockled silence overhead abruptly goes on waking up the dead who never left. I've got a lot to say in terse enjambments of the life that wrought from the encampments of real history, the man who stands before you in his mystery and the excessive drama of his thought, how knowledge was from outer action got internally as holy men might pray, and how the tiger captured what he sought. 2. I start with the spaghetti in the pot, so the tiled kitchens, relegated tiles, how like the powdered lamp post have the steam, haze the steam, froze cloud-like, operatic in the room, where some nomadic goddess, Nordic god, goes dribbling muddy ciphers in the sod, where sea beasts, sister, and the day goes boom, like the beginning of a pregnant dream, with anything thrown in it, numbered miles of wicked sorceresses in their wiles, a good beginning for a propped up tot, how with his manners eventually he bought the dream itself and paid it dividends, out where poetic fury never ends. And the ghosts. They weren't very discreet, the ghosts who in town center walked down Main Street. And though they fought the Revolutionary War, their lives were much the same many years before, farming and visiting from door to door, or living out of sight and increasing store. We wandered too in circles in the night, lighting upon each extraordinary sight with bubbles of laughter, trying to get things right. From time to time, they had to cross our paths or put out candles after extravagant baths. They closed the window and they hit the latch, at once the musket and the pumpkin patch, or sit in bowers at the break of spring, wait for each other, take turns on the swing. The things they left had the look of being seen, so that we have an inkling of what they mean. And though their doors be all closed up in silence, from the rooftops and on the battle green, they are quite palpable and still intense. The doctor makes a neat incision based on municipal decision. closes the wound, the tempered part, with anesthesia pins the heart. The atmosphere is his whole wood, the moral duty to be good, to do good, where mansions crumble at the edge of the new universal college. A virgin snow remade the world that year. 3 kings had heard the rumor from afar and wandered from the east by guiding star. The sacred place was frosted with the sheer anticipation of a world to come. The shepherds and the animals were dumb with with gazing out the windows for the far approaching kings, the radiant Hamilcar. The old world would be disappearing fast. The marvels that they saw they knew would last. The wind stood patient on the bare-swept sill. Guests stood in silence on the little hill. The 3 kings from a distance could be seen. It was the most spectacular thing that's ever been. In my dream, I was alone with my mother. My mamala was rushing along now quickly in the narrow sunlight of the gutter. Her skirts were skipping with a great emotion, which made her burst out random words of Yiddish. I held her round the waist and we went on. Now I was my proper self and son, and felt inside a great inheritance. We passed the empty beaches with a dance, while mother scorned the woman I had been with. In fewer words, what woman did I begin with? Distracted from the ragged stragglers by some strange seismic motion on the hill, as if it hadn't had enough to kill. My dad's words echoing that they moved a mountain each time they slammed their fists on it in rage. A great structure where we stayed as guests turned on its side and toppled off the hill onto the beach. Most people rushed to it to see the dead and save those who were living, but anyone it hit was beyond saving. The Deer Park. The little cafe by the tiny river. The Deer Park at the university, from which from your bedroom window you can see. The ghosts of Christmas plays upon the mantle. Your mother's boring glare. Your mother's boring glare, which you could handle. Fumbling in the driveway with the keys, then back upon the highway as we please, each world returning to each separate liver. I follow you about the neighborhood, the wrought iron railings overgrowing wood, trying to bring you love and bring you solace, while each dark thought will come and take its place, grappling with God through nights and days, while language waits for what you have to tell us. And the last poem I'll read tonight is Strawberry Night. He looked quite well, felt ease in being questioned by their wives. His good looks spilled out of his privacy. He knew the leader of the orchestra from somewhere else, years in another town. Something was for him, some eyes in the room. A man held his lapel with love even. He disappeared to sample the fresh fruit and took a seat beside where hers would be, from which he could survey the entrances. Then she came in, eyes waiting for her eyes. He watched her through a side gap in the tent, holding her plate in line while overhead uncommon storm clouds gathered and blew in. When a young girl pulled at him in the rain, he said, "Go away, will you go away?" Converging with her going in, he knew she wouldn't be standing next to him in the group when the camera flashed. Then in the linger of the moment after, they came together in another's words. Seeing her standing there, he never heard. Was he never happier? Then tell the story of how, after she had left, he had stood in the rain outside the tent, watching them through the lit up transparency, and placed his drink directly on the line between the lit up and the unlit grass of the wide lawn under the far lights. Thank you.
Maybe two questions, if anyone has any questions for the poets. Anyone have any questions?
Can I invite folks back on December 10th?
Yes.
David mentioned that I edited a magazine called Spoke, and we're here to Friday night, December 10th, holiday party here. Okay. We're gonna have four great readers. One, the legendary Carol Weston from Boston, Massachusetts, studied under Robert Lowell and many others. Two, Philip Nikolaev here in disguise as Asa Mandelstam. And a woman named Ariella Ruth, emerging poet in the Boston area. And who is the fourth?
You.
No, Matthew Porto.
Yes.
Matthew Porto. So those are four folks that that live in the area that are in the new issue of Spoke, which is going to be our biggest one. It 484 pages, bigger than the Bible is what we're branding this one.
Awesome. Is next Wednesday with Austin Carter and Emily Skillings. We hope you'll all be able to make it. Let's give one more round of applause for the poets.
Kevin said that Jazz 2 is better. So you can include the photograph in the magazine? Both photographs?
Just bar one.
Cool. That's the better one.
Can't wait to get sued. Can't wait to get sued.
Yeah. You have my reviewer. I'm not sure. Yes, I do.
Yeah.